Hello class, this is the second in a series of videos for the students that are working on designing and building cardboard furniture or working in cardboard in general. And in this video I'm going to be talking about how to cut cardboard safely and accurately, both straight and curved lines. So first let's make sure we have the right tools. One, a sharp pencil for drawing the lines you want to cut on your cardboard. A decent ruler, preferably long enough or longer than any cuts you're going to make. So this is an 18-inch one, which should be sufficient. I also have a 2-foot ruler here as well. And then knives. I've got a X-Acto blade or a craft knife, and I have a box cutter or a utility blade. Both of these need their blades changed. If you have a craft knife, you turn the hub at the base of the knife counterclockwise. Make sure it's pushed forward. The blade sometimes will fall right out, but you can see the cross pattern at the tip here. The blade fits in and out of there. You grab a fresh blade, slide it in, and then tighten this. You don't have to grind it shut, but you want it quite snug. You want to make sure the blade is all the way in. What often happens after cuts is the tip will get dull or even break off. And if you have the blades to spare, changing them as many times as you need to in order to have a nice fresh blade will make cutting a lot easier and a lot more accurate. With the old blade, I usually wrap this up in a little piece of paper or cardboard before I throw it out, just so you don't have a sharp blade in the garbage. With the utility knife, this is the most common kind. You pull up the black plastic tab on the back, and then you can back the blade all the way out. It just hooks on a little tab right there. There's plenty of blade left in that, but I'm just going to switch it for demonstration. Then you can pick up your next blade, hook it on, which sometimes can be a little tight, and then slide it back in, put the housing back on, and slide it down. And now it slides back and forth easily. You want it to lock. This tab comes out, and now it's locked in place, which is very important for cutting and makes it safer. If you need to change the blade along each of the perforations along this blade, you can break them off to give yourself a fresh blade. What you do if you want to change the blade, you back it up so that the perforation is as close as possible to the plastic housing. The perforation is just on one side. You're going to place that perforated side down, and you're going to snap the blade off. I usually look away when I'm doing this if you're not wearing glasses or safety goggles, but you press down firmly until it snaps off, and then you have a fresh blade on there that you can extend. The other blade usually flips onto the floor, and you want to make sure that you find that and dispose of that the same way you would with an old X-Acto blade. Other tools that can be helpful but are not essential are triangles for various angles, especially right angles. And if you have one, a French curve, which can help you draw any curved line. Compasses also help if you're doing circles. I don't have one right here. All right. First, you have a box that you want to break down. Here's an old Amazon box. What you're going to do is generally with these boxes, when you're building with them, you don't want these folds of the boxes in the middle of your pieces. You want to work just with the flat panels. So what I'm going to do is just pull out one of these center panels that we can work with. Even when I'm just cutting along the folds, I use a ruler, and that helps me preserve the large panel. I always put my ruler over the material I want to save, so if I cut off in a particular direction, it's cutting into scrap. And also by placing a ruler down, it helps guide the knife, and I can keep it away from my fingers. I'm going to quickly do this, and then when I do the more accurate cuts, I'll explain a little bit more about cutting technique. Initially, cutting down a cardboard box into sort of usable components can be a little bit awkward just because of the size of it. But it's worth it to take your time with it, because then you end up with as much usable material as possible. Now with this sharp blade, you can see how quickly and easily I can cut through this material. With one cut, you don't have to do it all in one clean cut, but with a sharp blade, you should be able to. And I'm just going to cut off this one tab right here. This is where the box overlaps. So we'll just work with this piece of cardboard right now. And you'll notice I'm working on a rubber sort of self-healing cutting board. These are great. They also often, seamstresses or sewers have one of these. So there might be one in your house. If you're not using this, you can use another piece of cardboard. The thickest, sort of sturdiest board, a wood cutting board can work too. But the harder the surface is, the quicker your knife will dull, or even the tip will snap off. So the better surface you have to cut, the better. So first, cutting a nice, clean, straight line. Let's say I have this piece of board. It is a little over 11 inches by about 18 inches. Let's say I want an 8 by 8 square. Now, don't cut that 8 by 8 square right out of the middle. Use the existing corners that you have, as long as that's a nice right angle. And that's where one of these tools can come in handy to check to make sure that your angles are right. That's pretty close. And then when you want to measure our first 8-inch dimension, I'm going to cut in 8 inches from one side. I'm going to measure 8 inches here. Now, a common mistake is just to measure in once and then go ahead and draw a line and just eyeball whether or not it's parallel to the edge. I would encourage you not to do that. I would measure in your 8 inches in at least 2 points. Sometimes if it's a really long place, I'll do 3. And then match up those marks to make sure you have a nice straight line that is exactly parallel to the other edge of our 8-inch square. And now I'm going to measure in 8 inches on this side to get our 8-inch square. And I'm going to draw that line as well. I always draw the lines that I'm cutting, just so I can step back and take a look at the shape, do one last double check with measuring to make sure that I have the dimensions I want, and then I'm ready to cut out my 8-inch square over here. Now I'm going to place my ruler over the material that I want to save. This is scrap, very usable scrap, but if I'm going to make a mistake and cut into anything, I want to cut into stuff that I haven't measured out. This is what I want to keep, so that's what I'm protecting with the ruler. I'm holding it very firmly with my hand, and I'm going to draw the knife down towards me. You always cut towards yourself. And that seems anti-intuitive, but that's where your strength lies, and that's where your accuracy comes from, is the knife in your hand following your wrist and your forearm. It's more of an arm movement as opposed to any sort of hand movement. Curved lines are a little bit different, but the principle is the same. As much as you can use your arm as sort of a stiff kind of jointless tool holding the knife, the more accurate and strong you'll be. Now you can draw it lightly down and score into it, and you can see that's scored most of the way through. And when we get into folding cardboard, that's a method you can use. And then the knife blade is going to want to follow that score, and then I can put the blade in again and cut through the rest of the way. Having to do 1, 2, or even 3 strokes, getting into 2 or 3 strokes will happen more often with the double ply cardboard. Stuff like this that has 2 plies and is 3/16 or 1/4 of an inch thick. But this is thin 1 ply cardboard with just 1 layer of corrugation. And it cuts easier with just 1 stroke. Again, protecting my 8-inch square, placing the ruler, holding it firmly with my hands. And now this cut is a little jerkier because I'm cutting across the corrugation, but it's still easy to do it in one swoop. And then I've got my 8-inch square. So that's measuring and cutting a straight line. And if you watch me cut, there's no way that I could have cut myself if I used that method. I'm placing the ruler over the material I want to protect, and my fingers are not over the edge of the ruler that I'm going to cut. So there's no way the knife can skip over the ruler and into my hand. If it goes anywhere, if I slip out, it's going to slip out this way, away from my hand, away from the material I want to save. This hand is safe because it's holding the knife. This hand is safe. I have certainly cut myself with an X-Acto blade, and they can be quite serious. So take your time, keep your technique right, and stay safe. Because if you cut yourself with an X-Acto blade, you're probably going to need stitches, and that means a trip to the hospital. All right, so that's cutting straight lines. Let's talk about cutting curved lines. I am just going to use the French curve to round off one of these. And there's all sorts of reasons why you need curved lines on your furniture. Now, the French curve is interesting just because, at least in theory, I've never sort of put it into practice. It has the ability to make any curve that you need up to a certain scale. So let's say this is the shape I want, so I need to cut away these pieces. Now, cutting curved lines, you can't use a ruler. So your non-cutting hand is a little more exposed, so you need to be aware of that. And you also don't have the ability to put it against a straight edge and cut against it. So now we're cutting freehand. You still want to hold the material very firmly. And then I'm still, as much as possible, cutting toward myself. Now, often with cutting curves, I can cut all the way through with one stroke, but I find it's a little easier to follow along and score it. And you can see that scoring right there. And then I would follow it again and cut it all the way through. And then I'll cut this one right here. Now, even with this 90-degree turn, I'll cut this far. I'll turn the material so I continue to cut towards myself and finish the cut, turn it back to cut it the rest of the way through, turn the material, leaving the knife blade in there, and then cut it the rest of the way. So even with that 190-degree turn, I don't want to cut sideways. I don't want to cut this way. I don't want to cut this way. I don't want to cut away from myself. All of that is dangerous and inaccurate. I want to cut towards myself. All right, last cut. I'm going to score this. Go as slow as you want. Let the blade sort of hop over the corrugation. You don't need to go all the way through. Keep turning the material so you're always cutting towards yourself. And these tight corners can be a little bit tricky, but just get that scoring done. Keep turning the material. And then I'm going to cut it the rest of the way. Now again, with 2-ply, 3-ply or really thick cardboard, this can take 3, even 4 sort of go-rounds. Don't feel like you have to power through and cut it all in one stroke. Now, if something catches, I'm trying to pull it away and there's still something caught. Obviously, I'm strong enough to sort of rip it away, but I might get a ragged edge that way. I think it's always a better idea just to get the blade back in there, find where it's cut, and then cut it away. So I've done the first piece. Now, if I needed more of these, you can now use this piece as a template to produce your other ones. So if you needed one for each corner of your piece of furniture, or if you needed the same size circle or something like that, cut the first one nice and slowly and accurately, and then you have a wonderful template to cut any others. And if you use it carefully, you can still use it as a template and then use it on your furniture. All right, and with the utility blade, everything is the same. You lose some of the mobility and accuracy, not accuracy, but some of the agility of the craft blade because it's a much bigger blade. But there's nothing that this can do that the utility blade can't do. You just have to be aware that it's a wider blade and might not want to turn as sharply as easily as the craft blade does. All right, I think that's it for cutting straight lines and curves in cardboard. Look out for the next in the cardboard series, which will be about gluing cardboard both edge to edge and layering up to get thicker and stronger cardboard. So good luck with your furniture, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.